Well, good morning, everybody, or should I say happy Friday afternoon? Yes, it is Friday, and we are the first Friday, or was it the second Friday already of April? I cannot believe how fast this year is moving, and quite thankful for that, though, because we're so ready to be in the space of economic recovery and reopening, during this time in our history and our communities. And we're excited because we have partnered with the city to share with you all of the amazing departments that happen to do great work inside the community for the city. I think a lot of community members, small businesses out there don't realize all of the offices that are put in place and the departments put in place to help you grow and scale your business, answer your questions, and then for community members as well. To say, hey, I didn't know that was happening in the city. I was not aware that they had that office or department. And so this series, which will be about a 6-week series every Monday, Wednesday, Friday at noon, is really meant to introduce you to the key players and help to get you connected in ways that maybe you had never thought about before. So new innovative ways to build and rebuild here as we reopen in this amazing city we call Albuquerque and we call home. So today we are bringing you a couple of different departments and some friends of those departments to share with you all about equity and inclusion and the different things that are happening within the city, who has departments specifically meant to address these questions and issues that are happening inside the community. Before we get started, a big shout out and a big thank you to Stacy and team for helping us get this together at the City of Albuquerque, the mayor's office, of course, every department that we have had the pleasure of meeting so far, and of course, Angelique, who's hiding behind the camera here at the Albuquerque Hispano Chamber, who gets us ready for technology during this time. So we're going to go ahead and jump in and get started. We have a great group of panelists with us today, and so many things to talk about. So we're just going to jump right in. We could start with introduction, who you are, your title, what you do, and then we're going to start some fun conversation today. So I'm just going to start in the order that you guys are on my screen. And Tori, you are first.
Hey there. Good afternoon. I'm Tori Jacobus. My pronouns are she, her, and hers. Excuse me. I am a managing assistant city attorney for the city of Albuquerque, and I also run the Office of Civil Rights. And in the context of running the Office of Civil Rights, my office is tasked with preserving and promoting human rights and dignity. And we do this by addressing and enforcing civil rights violations in multiple areas, including discriminatory employment, business, and housing practices. And in order to help with that, we provide outreach and trainings for businesses, organizations, individuals, schools, really any group on a variety of topics, including discrimination, voter suppression, and racial justice. And then within that umbrella, we can do almost any topic. I like to read and I like to research, so I'm always happy to create a new topic for a group. Thank you.
Wonderful. Looking forward to some great conversation. Giovanna, you're next.
Yes, good morning, everyone, or good afternoon, I should say. It's noon. I'm Giovanna Burrell. Pronouns I use are she, her, and hers, and I'm the culture change leader within the Office of Equity and Inclusion. So basically what that means, my role is to develop and implement different equity, inclusion, anti-racism, and social justice learning opportunities for all city employees with community overlap for some of our opportunities. So come to this work as an educator.
Fabulous. Thank you so much. Michelle, you're next.
Good afternoon. My name is Michelle Melendez. I am the inaugural director of the city's Office of Equity and Inclusion. This is a new department that was established by Mayor Keller when he was first elected. He had run on an equity and inclusion platform, and so the creation of this office brought with it the establishment of Native American Affairs, African American Affairs, Immigrant and Refugee Affairs, the Culture Change Initiative that Giovanna leads, as well as a lot of data work that we do to help the city really make decisions based on data that show the inequities and how we can really close those gaps.
Okay, wow, I just had a million questions go through my mind, so I can't wait for this conversation. It's lots of stuff happening within the city. We also have with us Race Consulting, and here to represent, we'll start with Zamil.
Thank you, Shannon. Hi, my name is Zamil Salha. My pronouns are they, them, theirs. I'm a co-founder of Race Consulting. We are a cross-raced, gender queer, cisgendered team of facilitators helping folks and individuals within the community to actively deconstruct white supremacist beliefs, behaviors, and language. And this year we're teamed up with the Office of Equity and Inclusion.
Great, thank you. And Kendra.
Thank you. My name is Kendra Toth. I use the pronouns she, her, and I'm the other half of Race Consulting, and I'm happy to be a partner with the Culture Change Initiative this year.
Wonderful, welcome. Well, we have a lot to discuss, and I think it would probably help the viewing audience to just understand a little bit more about the offices and really what the mission is and the purpose of the departments. And I know we touched on it briefly, but let's get into some more talk about that. So I'm going to hop back over to Tori, and let's talk a little bit about the Office of Civil Rights and give us some specifics about the mission and what is the goal of the department, and we'll start there.
All right, great. Thank you again. So again, our mission is preserving and protecting human rights and dignity. And Albuquerque has a human rights ordinance that we've had in place since 1974. We had older human rights and civil rights legislation that was all replaced by the 1974 ordinance that prohibits discrimination in our community in the areas of employment, business, and housing. And it protects people of all sorts of protected classes, such as age, gender, sexual orientation and identity, race, national origin. It mirrors pretty closely our state level and our federal level anti-discrimination laws. And so what we do is we enforce that law. People can come to us when they feel that they've been discriminated against, and we can provide information on what the law says, what their rights are. And if they want, we can help file a complaint so that they can work with the alleged wrongdoer on finding a resolution to what happened. And then the flip side of that is for businesses, we also offer the service where they can call us and get information and guidance on how they can make sure to follow the law. And that information and guidance can go so far as a training for just certain key players at a business, all of management, or everyone. Again, just any size group. We want to make sure the law is followed, and we understand that not everyone knows how to do so. And so we want to we make ourselves available to get as much information out there as possible.
Okay, so just to clarify, because I was taking notes, and I just want to kind of wrap my head around this, because I was unaware of this as well, which is so great that we're doing these webinars, because we're learning so much about the different departments within the city and what they offer. So it sounds like if there is maybe an employer, employee, whoever it may be, people inside the community that may have a concern, maybe they're feeling discriminated against when it comes to employment or their business or housing, they could reach out to your department, your office, and you could guide them, correct?
That's correct. That's absolutely correct. Yes, yes. And I think I left disability off my list, but disability is another protected class.
Awesome. Okay, so that's really great. I think what a great opportunity for small business owners. We have a lot of minority business owners in our community, obviously, and it's just a really great opportunity for them to know that there is support in that area. It's a new area for a lot of businesses, for a lot of people, for the community, and so helping them to understand, to navigate it and understand what rights they have is really, really big. So we're going to definitely come back and talk more to Tori in just a minute, but I want to hop over to Giovanna and Michelle as well and talk the same question. Tell us a little bit about the Office of Equity and Inclusion. What is the mission? What is the goal of the department? And you know, some of the reasons that you exist.
Well, you know, our office and our mayor in our city really believes that our diversity as a city is our greatest strength. And so how do we really take advantage of the, you know, the beautiful community that we have and make true what we say about ourselves in terms of every single person in our city should have that equitable opportunity to thrive. And, you know, we're very glad that there are anti-discrimination laws in place, but we also know that there are still structures and policies that disadvantage some people. And so we want to try to change those policies and close those gaps at a very structural level. And so when we were established 3 years ago, we set our mission to become a role model in the nation for racial equity and social justice in the city of Albuquerque. And we set our goal on four actually major areas of opportunity. And those are focusing on who we hire as a city, because the city is a great employer and our workforce should be reflective of our diversity. We get better outcomes by having that diversity within our own workforce. We also focus on where we invest capital dollars in our city. And there have been neighborhoods that have been underinvested and under-resourced historically. And so how do we make our city more equitable in terms of those investments? And also, who do we do business with as a city? You know, the city has a significant buy every year. We buy goods and services, and we want to make sure that minority and women-owned businesses have really great opportunities to do business with the city. And also our services, every single department that provides city services, how do we help them learn how to relate better to those different parts of our community that are extremely vulnerable or who don't normally participate in programs? It could be language barriers. It could be just unfamiliarity with the way cities work. We've got lots of people from all over the world who live in our city. So how do we make our entire city that much more friendly and welcoming and responsive to their needs? And so, you know, that's a big job. And we started with 2 people in this department, but because of the mayor's commitment to this work, and because of a grant that we received from the W.K. Kellogg Foundation, we've grown from a very small department of 2 to now we have 9 full-time staff. And we're kind of unique in the country. There are other offices of equity and inclusion popping up, and we're part of a national network called GARE, the Government Alliance on Race and Equity. But there are some unique things that we have in Albuquerque, and it's that Native American affairs, African American affairs, immigrant and refugee affairs, those aspects built into our office really help us have that continuous dialogue, listening to our community and bringing in the information from those communities to really help reshape our government. And so we're pretty proud of being a little different. You know, we've always got to be different in the city of Albuquerque, and this growing department. We like to say that we're small but mighty.
You are small but mighty. That is a lot that you guys are doing, and it's really incredible, you know, to hear that you guys have reached out and you've received a grant to help you grow this much needed service to the city, like you said, to be different, but to also help the city grow in this space. And I think that's exciting. And I'd like to bring in maybe Zamil to start us off a little bit and talk a little bit about RACE and what it is, and then also how you are working with the departments.
Thank you. So both Kendra and I, we capitalize, so to speak, on our differences. Myself being a person of color, street race Black, genderqueer, veteran, disabled, and how we work within the community is looking at folks and challenging folks to examine white supremacy behaviors and construct that we've all been socialized into, and hence working not only with the city, but with other individuals and groups as well within Albuquerque. And we started partnering up with the Office of Equity and Inclusion last summer, and then officially through this year to help with continuing the culture shift. And the work that we do is helping folks to really look at, in order to really move through and shift shift into a more equitable stance, we have to look within, and we have to look at our internal struggles with white supremacy behavior and construct, and recognize that we can look at changing the systems. And while doing so, we also have to, in tandem, shift how we don't replicate the systems that we are trying to deconstruct by examining how we perpetuate white supremacy behaviors, language, and thought processes. And I'll pass it along to Kendra to also add.
Thank you. So we are partners with the Culture Change Initiative, and we support and collaborate. We provide trainings, and we also act as accountability partners for each other in this work. It's pretty tough, and sometimes it can get overwhelming and confusing. And so we really lean into that with each other and building a broad, sustainable foundation to hold this work and move it forward and to make it long lasting.
Thank you so much, Kendra. And you're right. It is there is a lot of questions. There's a lot of uncertainties around it, and not everybody knows how to engage in the right conversation. And so that is why doing this today really will help. I hope the community and small business owners be able to reach out, know who to reach out to, and why they're reaching out if they have questions regarding equity and inclusion. I think it's important that we have this conversation. So I want to thank everybody for being on this panel today. I'd like to kind of hop over to Tori a little bit, and I want to talk to you a little bit about, who are the people that work inside of your department? What are some of the initiatives that you're currently doing? Who are some of the key people that we would want to know some of the jobs that are happening inside of the Office of Civil Rights?
It took me a second to find my mute button, as though it moved. I don't know what's up with me this morning.
It's only been a year. We're still learning Zoom.
Right. Okay, so my department is both small but not. So the primary people in Office of Civil Rights are myself and Crystal Velarde. Crystal is my program coordinator, and we are the two who anyone who calls will talk to. And then we also have right now 3 interns and 1 law clerk. And I paused for interns because we have sort of a rotating cycle of interns. We open up our office to any young person who wants to intern. We offer volunteer internships, occasionally for pay, and then also will help them get high school or college credit. And that's a really great opportunity for the students, but we also learn too, because the younger people bring in technology and skills that Crystal and I just don't have. And so it's a really fun learning opportunity for all of us. And then I'm also officially situated in the Office of the City Attorney, and there are about 50 or so attorneys there. And so I can also rely on that team for additional research help when I need it. And then our initiatives, oh, I'm so sorry.
No, that's a lot. I mean, we don't know this. We see the office of the, the attorneys or what have you, but we don't really know what happens behind those closed doors. So it's interesting that many people are working inside the city.
Yeah, it was really interesting to me too when I came over, because I knew that there were a team of them who worked to defend the city, but I didn't know that there was this whole other team who are working to support the inner workings of the city. So every city department has at least 1 attorney assigned to them who helps with their contracts, their policies, and their procedures, and just really helps keep the city running. And they're kind of like shadow workers, because you don't see or hear from them very often. They're in the background. And then I think you also asked about initiatives in my office. We really focus on 2 big things at any given moment: getting out information about discrimination and anti-discrimination, and building up our investigation process. We lump all of that together. Then the other piece is just general outreach and education. And that's on those anti-discrimination topics, as well as voter suppression, racial justice. I did a fun housing discrimination presentation earlier this week. And then I also talk relatively frequently to high school students. I'll talk to middle schoolers and elementary school students, but we get the most requests for high school students. And that can cover the topics I just stated. But I also like to talk about being a woman of color, being a Black woman, being an attorney, what that looks like for me, what my personal struggles and successes have been. And I think it's really important to have that conversation with young people because they may not have a Black woman lawyer in their life who can speak to these. There are no lawyers in my family, so I was the first. And so I really appreciated the opportunity to talk to other people who came before me. And so I like to give back in that way too.
Well, it's always really, really important to give back. So I think that's amazing. And being able to be an inspiration to the youth, to young boys and girls who are thinking, could I ever do that? Could I ever be that? And seeing that you've achieved that is always very inspirational. So it's great. Thank you so much for doing that and continuing to do that, because that's the work, is the continuation of it. So kind of moving back over to the Office of Equity and Inclusion. So back to Michelle and Giovanna, the same question. You know, what is the break? I know we just talked that you guys were able to bring on 9 full-time, but what are some of the duties? And then also what are some of the initiatives that are currently happening from your department out into the community?
Well, I'll definitely hand it over to Giovanna because I really want you to hear about culture change. But something that's very relevant to the businesses in our city, and they may have noticed that 3 years ago we changed the city's W-9 form. And it was a little bit of a pain. I can imagine having to fill out a new W-9 form to be a vendor with the city. But the reason behind that was to start collecting the demographic data so that we could understand with whom are we doing business as a city. And that way we can have a baseline and we'll know now if we're doing better to reach and do business with those minority and women-owned businesses. So, we started collecting the demographic data and started analyzing with the Department of Finance and Administration who we're doing business with as a city. And we've just recently collaborated with the Economic Development Department to conduct a disparity study. And businesses and the Hispano Chamber will know this. We're a partner with the Hispano Chamber and the American Indian Chamber of Commerce and the African American Chamber on this, and the Asian Business Association, to really try to understand from businesses what their experience has been like trying to get a contract or do business with the city. And so that we can understand what are the barriers, what's hard. We know that access to capital, we know that things like bonding and insurance can be barriers for small businesses. So our city has done many, many things to try to remove those barriers, and things like breaking up large contracts, right? So that if we're buying computer equipment from one company and it's a national company, but we know that there are resellers right here in our own city, how can we buy some of those different computer materials, computer supplies from the local buyer? So we're doing really great on local, and now we want to focus on minority and women-owned businesses. So we are conducting a disparity study. So you'll see that in the next few months, the results of that. And we're really asking the chambers to help us reach businesses so we can get that rich information about their experience.
Well, Michelle, we do work very closely with economic development here at the Chamber, and we are more than happy to help you get that information out, or the surveys, or whatever it is, how you're collecting the data and the analytics on that. It is important. We're very, very procurement heavy here at the Hispano Chamber, really working hard towards making sure that businesses get the opportunity, but a lot of it comes from just simple lack of knowledge and not understanding. So we take on that arm here at the Chamber and put them through training and understanding who to go to, who to connect with, what are the right questions to ask, and really what is procurement, which is buying when the city, state, federal, whatever it is, entity is procuring goods from you and your business.
Yeah.
And so that's important. It's a huge piece of what we do, and to be able to make sure that we are working with the community on that is huge. And so I applaud that effort because it's such a big thing that we do here. So thank you so much for that. Now I know
the other thing that we're doing with businesses is we know that minority-owned businesses are going to have a harder time recovering from this pandemic because they don't have the deep generational wealth that some of the other more established white-owned businesses have. And so we're really pushing for the recovery to focus on small and minority and women-owned businesses who don't have as much access to maybe the PPP loans and banking and other sources of resource like that, because we want all of our businesses to come back and to thrive, because that's the source of jobs and wealth building in our city. And there's a huge gap right now in wealth within our city between people of color and white people. And one of the best strategies to close that is by focusing on equity as our strategy. And so that's why we do a lot of training. We have to train our internal audience, the city itself, on why are we focusing on racial equity. And that's why Giovanna in her role and with partners like RACE have a huge opportunity to help our city employees understand, why are we not doing things in a race neutral way? Why are we focusing on closing the racial equity gaps? So I really want to let Giovanna talk about the Culture Change Initiative.
Yes, awesome. Thank you for teeing me up, Michelle. The Culture Change Initiative, it started formally in 2020. Trainings had always took place in 2019 with the establishment of the Office of Equity and Inclusion. As I came on later in that year, working to develop learning opportunities, because as you said, Shannon, these aren't easy conversations to have, you know, within the workspace and just as people in general. And so really developing a space where people can show up authentic, but also brave. And really one of the aspects is normalizing conversations around racism and social justice. And so we offer over 20 different learning sessions because we want to make sure we meet people where they're at. This is new conversations for some folks. And then for other people, they may have been doing this work for years and years. So we have various learning opportunities starting from implicit bias. And then we also do work with national partners, the People's Institute for Survival and Beyond, who brings a 4-day Undoing Racism intensive. And so there's various opportunities for city employees to engage in their learning. Yes, this is professional work, but within Culture Change, we also remind people this is soul work. You know, this is to all help us be better and be that one Albuquerque that we all want to be, is doing this culture change work, not only within your departments, but also with communities. So we partner with various local community members to bring in different education and learning opportunities, not only for city employees, but also just to make that connection. A part of Culture Shift is also connecting each other with the various city departments and local community trainers that we partner with. So yeah, we're really excited. It's our first year working formally the Culture Change Initiative, and over the 2 years, we've trained over 1,500 city employees, and training's just not a check mark. You know, this is ongoing work. The city is on a journey towards racial equity. And so that's where it's important for us to partner with folks such as Race Consulting to help us move this forward, because we can't do this alone. So.
And I'm glad you ended with that, close that sentence with that, because that was my question. My question was to bring Zamil and Kendra back in, and the importance of having the right group around you, the right people, the right consultants to help move the work forward. And so it sounds like that's exactly what RACE does. So Zamil and Kendra, bringing you back into this conversation a little bit, you know, how are you specifically working with them? And then what is the messaging that, I'm assuming that RACE Consulting is a separate business. So you're doing the work in partnership with the city. So what are some of the things that you do out into the community as well, and how you partnering with the city as well?
Sure. Thank you, Shannon. And I just want to note that, you know, we, both Kendra and I and our team, you know, we're two of us, you know, we're just tiny in the larger pool of individuals within Albuquerque and the state itself who are doing race equity work. We have folks who have been doing this for decades. We have folks who, you know, who are sort of new to it, but we're in a stream of a large community of folks doing race equity work. So I feel like it's important to name that, and for us to have teamed up with the Office of Equity and Inclusion I think it, you know, for me, I look at the beauty of being able to team up with this office to help with the culture change initiative and to help, as Giovanna named, like the normalization. You know, in our society, we look at, you know, just discussions of race not being normalized, being charged, and they are charged. And so part of this is the normalization. And so Kendra and I come in and we do our best to really foster an environment where city employees can come in and be in space with each other and honestly like be able to name in language and use language that they're new to, that maybe they've not heard, or even if they've heard it before, maybe don't feel comfortable using, to recognize that in order, because you know the city of Albuquerque is it's a construct within the larger construct of white supremacy culture. And so the uniqueness is that to be doing this work within a city entity, to genuinely be doing this work and shifting to help shift it so that city employees are shifting alongside each other, and to have that then ripple out into their own social circles, their family circles, so that that language becomes normalized as well, is so important. Because the fact is that city employees, they're not just staying in the city, they're community members as well. We're all community members. And so if a city employee is able to come to the workshops and start learning how to look at the internalized whiteness and what that is and name those pieces, they can start having those conversations with other peers, and also recognizing that city employees are interacting with community members in various different departments. And so it really expands how the community as a whole, especially those of us who are Black, Indigenous, people of color, who are genderqueer, who are queer, who are navigating disabilities, and other things that, you know, that make us a marginalized community, so to speak. And we can start to really look at what equality can be and needs to be. And so, you know, you mentioned about like how else does race work within community. And so, you know, we've worked with UNM Hospital, we've worked with several schools, we also work with individuals one-on-one. We do what's called affinity work group, and affinity work regarding working specifically for myself, working with Black, Indigenous, people of color, on how do we embody white supremacy behavior. Kendra does that as well with white-bodied folks. And so this work that Kendra and I do, like this is ongoing, and it's in every area of our own lives and our own culture and languaging. And so we help to bring that within the work with OEI. And I'll pass it to Kendra to also add.
Thank you. Yeah, I echo that. I think one of the special sweet spots that we do is the affinity work, and really leaning into those difficult conversations of what does it mean to deconstruct race, racism, white supremacy, fragility. And so that's one of the things that we enjoy. And then being in the workshops with, you know, Giovanna, it's a wonderful opportunity Giovanna opens a safe space in that culture change initiative. And then being with city employees to also in cross-race groups, talk about these issues and think like, how does it impact that department? It's just really, it's beautiful to witness in that way. It sounds kind of cheesy, but it's cool to witness in that way of like people actually talking about it. And how do we change and how do we shift? So, yeah.
Well, I think that the talking is the most important. The conversation is the most important, and being able to feel comfortable if you have those questions, if it's something that affects you, being able to have I believe it was Giovanna that said, you know, a space and open and honest and brave conversation about that, because it is difficult for some. And so I really appreciate the work that you guys are doing, because it's allowing the people to ask those questions little by little, slowly, but surely it will become an easier conversation over time. So I think that that's important to note. I wanted to kind of go back a little bit over to Tori for just a few minutes. Now, we all know that the last year has been epic, if nothing else, in our time, in our world, in our community, for sure. And you know, COVID itself was a difficult time for businesses to recover, obviously now in that stage of recovery here in New Mexico. But within every organization, they had struggles. There was pivoting, quick thinking, and quick change that had to happen in order to make your organization, your business, your department maintain relevancy and keep going during this time. And so, Troy, I'd like to ask you, you know, how did COVID affect your department, your office, and what were some of the changes that came out of that? And what do you see that you will continue to do? What did you learn moving forward?
Thank you. So we already conducted a lot of our business via telephone and email. So at least that part we were able to transition into really easily. What we find is that some of our older community members don't have ready access to the internet, aren't comfortable transacting business over the phone. And we're not in the office right now, so they can't just walk in and talk to us. And even if they could, it might not be safe for us or them for them to come in. So what Crystal, my program manager, and I have been able to do is, when necessary, we meet people in person just around town to trade documents, to get things notarized. We've also been much more we help prepare people a little bit better about how you find a notary, where you can go. Because when people were going into their offices on a day-to-day basis, a lot of people have a notary in the office. And so now we have to educate people a little bit more in that space. Another challenge that we faced is that, you know, most of our outreach before was in person. And last spring, we canceled things and we kind of just paused, like, what are we going to do? We're not going to do any more trainings until COVID is over. And then, you know, a few months, we realized, well, gosh, COVID's not going to be over in 2 weeks like we thought. So what are we going to do? And so we have, like everyone else, have learned how to use Zoom as a tool, learned how to create Zoom webinars. We've partnered with another small organization, the New Mexico Black Lawyers Association. They're rather small too. And we've committed to doing a training or outreach opportunity once a month. And we're combining our power in order to do topics. So this year so far, we've done Transgender 101. We highlighted women in our community who are helping change our city and our state. And next week, we're doing a Fair Housing Act training. And then we have others mapped out for the year. I know later in the year, we're going to return to voter suppression. We're going to highlight some more amazing women, because it turns out an hour is not long enough to highlight what our community's doing. I will say Crystal has turned into a rock star handling Zoom webinars. They are a beast to manage, and we never would have had these skills last year. And going forward, we're going to keep these things that we're doing. There's no reason that we can't do a sort of hybrid in-person versus virtual session. The virtual nature has let more people not contact us, but more people interface with us. More people can show up to our webinars because they don't have to drive downtown, park, and then drive back to work. So we definitely want to keep that piece. We'll also just continue to meet people where they are, literally in town, to help get their documents signed. I think we had to learn a lot in order to navigate COVID, but we've learned some great things that have made us much more effective in the community.
Well, I'm going to have to second that, because I notice now with Zoom, we tend to have a little more meetings, but that's because we're not in the car driving back and forth. And so we tend to be a little more productive, but we do spend more time in meetings, I guess you could say, but we're also being able to be fed information through webinars, through social media, quick bites, you know, the different videos that are happening. And so I think it has opened up some doors that maybe wouldn't have been there last year for a lot of people in our community to be able to keep in touch and also learn. And that's the big thing. We always want to learn something new every day. So I agree with you.
Yeah, can I add on to that? I forgot to mention, and you brought it to my mind. I've learned so much of the last year because of the virtual nature of the presentation. So it used to be that if someone were presenting in London, uh-oh, we lost her. Shannon let us know that she was having technological difficulties, so it looks like they came to their peak. But what I was saying is that, you know, if someone was presenting in London, I couldn't go to London to their session, but now I can get information from all over the world, which has made me a better lawyer and a better civil rights advocate just over this last year. And that has been just such a wonderful privilege that would not have come about but for COVID. Thank you.
Yes, I never thought about that, and that's true. How we receive information worldwide, and yeah, that's a great point, and I definitely agree. Kind of moving over to the Office of Equity Inclusion. So same thing, you know, COVID presented a lot of opportunity. Now I know you are a newer office, and I know that the cultural change portion of what your office is doing is new as well. But you have to have had some sort of, oh my goodness, what are we going to do moving forward moment? And what was that like? And what were some of the changes you did? And then what are some of the things that you want to keep moving forward to help you move forward with the work that you're doing?
Well, I'll never forget the day that we were closing down our office in City Hall. Giovanna had a webinar planned the following day, and she changed the topic on just in that moment to focus on anti-Asian Pacific Islander bias, because there had been an attack at a local business downtown. Mm-hmm. And, you know, that misplaced anger, the confusion, the racism that was sweeping our nation, that began there. And then it also really started hitting the Native community, because there was so much spread in the Native community that Native Americans started being discriminated against as well regarding COVID. So I was really proud that our team really kicked it into high gear, like almost immediately. And that was because we knew that there was going to be so many people who were already vulnerable who would be left behind if we didn't really accelerate our work. Like, we've always been very focused on the most vulnerable in our city. And we took this opportunity to really try to make sure that people who don't speak English well or read English would get the same timely information about the disease that all of us were getting. It's not fair to have people who don't speak English get that 5-10 days later or never. So we started rapidly increasing our language accessibility, translating all of Tori's Know Your Rights documents into multiple languages, knowing that people were going to be discriminated against and how they can pursue their own rights. All of the COVID fact sheets, worker rights. We really knew that people of color largely were not going to be able to work from home or stay home, because they were the frontline workers working in nursing homes and hospitals and food businesses and warehouses, and all the services that were essential that had to keep us going as a city. That was majority people of color, and they were going to be disproportionately exposed to the virus. And because of racism, they would also be disproportionately impacted negatively by the virus and have worse outcomes. So we were throwing everything we could at getting resources, including language resources, to the community and through all the departments that were educating the community. So when we were starting to distribute food as a city, make sure that we look at neighborhoods where we weren't touching enough, and low-income neighborhoods. How would we do the outreach so that people who weren't aware of it could get senior food delivered to their homes? Rental assistance. We knew that there were going to be a lot of people who couldn't pay rent. And how are we going to make sure that those people who don't know that the city has rental assistance would have access. And the Wi-Fi, the city did a great job in expanding Wi-Fi very rapidly by throwing up these 25 mobile Wi-Fi. And we helped them decide where to put that. And we created videos in 5 languages with our community partners so that people would have the access on how to sign up for Wi-Fi and get that onto GovTV, because you can't look at the video if you don't have Wi-Fi. And then later, when the city made bus fare free, make sure that we put all of that information in multiple languages. And so those kinds of advances, we're glad that we kind of stuck that stake in the ground, and now the whole city as a whole really appreciates language access that much more. You notice the mayor began having ASL interpreters, American Sign Language, for every single mayoral COVID briefing, because it's that important to get the information to all members of our community. As well, he started bilingual English-Spanish town halls. And, so those were new advances that we hadn't done before. Our city councilor, Lan Sena, did bilingual town halls in English, Spanish, and Vietnamese in English, and Chinese in English. So those kinds of advances, we're glad that we've set the bar. And so that now as our city, we can really live up to our promise of being an immigrant-friendly city that is inclusive.
So, wow, all the things we don't know that are happening, all the things that we don't know that the city is doing. Now, of course, if you're watching the updates, you see the different languages, or you see somebody signing, and so you can see that those little things are happening, but to know all of the things that are happening, you guys have been very busy this year. This is a very busy department and office, we can tell. Is there anything specific, one thing or multiple things that you see will continue, or do you think this is a new practice that will continue moving forward in helping to build awareness, obviously, in the community, but then also ways to communicate, reaching those immigrant, families and immigrant businesses?
I think Giovanna wants to keep using these kinds of platforms. So,
yeah, I think it's opened up the space looking at culture change. It helps people learn in their own space. And also more people can show up, kind of like Tori was saying, people, instead of coming in person, they can show up to one of our learning sessions digitally. And then just also, I'll just add quickly to what Michelle was saying. In addition to culture change, we saw an uptick in regards to the movements for racial justice and Black Lives Matter over the summer. And there was just an uptick in people wanting to have conversations around racism and ask questions. And so culture change got really busy over last year, and it still continues as we move forward, not only locally, but nationally, having these conversations around race and racism. So yeah, we definitely want to keep it digital, but we still want to see people in person, because that's how we commune. We like to have snacks and talk and relate to one another. So it definitely has been a shift on how do you organize digitally, but then also how do you connect digitally as well.
Well, we face that here at the Chamber because we do a lot of networking events. Obviously, connection, like you stated, is really important for businesses to make that connection and hopefully finding their new client or their new contract or whatever that may be. So just as we get used to virtual, here we are going to transition into back to live. And I think some of that's going to be a hybrid of both as we move forward. But I'm going to have to agree with you, Giovanna, that it is going to be great to be able to mingle again in person and have that person-to-person connection that is hard sometimes over the camera. So I think that changes the way we interact with people quite a bit. So we're going to start to wind down the hour, but I think there's a couple of really important things that we need to get out there. And so I want to kind of go back to Tori, and I want to say, Tori, how can we get a hold of you? What is the ways that the city, citizens of our city, small business owners can connect, phone numbers, emails, web pages, whatever you want to share with us. And we're going to get that up in the chat on the Facebook Live link, as well as we'll make sure that we have that available to anybody that misses this. We'll be reposting this video, obviously, in our video library and sharing it as asked as well. So if you could start us off, Tori, with how to connect with you. and your office.
Yes. Okay, so we have several ways. 311 is the most direct way. So if you can't remember any of the other contact information, you can reach us through 311. Our direct office number is 505-768-4595. Again, that's 505-768-4595. And then we can be reached via email at civil rights with the S at cabq.gov. So civil rights at cabq.gov. And then we also have a web form that you can reach us through at cabq.gov/civil rights.
Wonderful. We will get that out there. And thank you so much for that information. And Michelle, same to you. How can we reach you? What is the best way for the public and small businesses to connect when they have questions?
Well, we would love for you to visit our website. We've got some resources. Giovanna has started curating different articles and trainers and people who are doing this race equity work, because we got so many calls last summer from businesses and nonprofits asking how they could start kind of getting onto the racial equity journey. So definitely visit our website, and that's cabq.gov/OEI. And our email address is oei@cabq.gov. And then follow us on Twitter, Facebook, and Instagram. You know, we post job postings every Friday for the city of Albuquerque, and we have a newsletter. We have we post constantly about all the different ways that people can stand up and show up for racial justice and social justice in our city.
Wow. A great tool, everybody that is out there listening and watching, hit up the website, because when you do that, you're able to really take a moment and read some of the initiatives and some of the ways to connect with any departments that we're talking to over the next 6 weeks, because you will be surprised the different initiatives and programs that are happening in the community that are put forth to support you and your business and, of course, the community. And so I would recommend that. I did that for our Wednesday guest just because I was my mind was blown with solid waste and environmental, the Office of Sustainability. There's so much happening in the community, and we only know what we know. So educate yourself, get involved, figure out what it is by going to the website and clicking those links. I also want to ask Zamil and Kendra the same question. If there is connections, ways that the public can get a hold of you, how would we do so?
Yes, it's raced, RACED consulting.com, or my first name, Zamil, at racedconsulting.com, or Kendra's first name, Kendra, at racedconsulting.com.
Perfect. Well, we obviously need way more time than an hour to talk about these two offices, these two departments, but it is 1 hour. And I think that these are conversations that definitely need to continue. There is ways, like I said, to reach out by using those phone numbers, emails, and websites that we will be listing inside of the post, so that you can do those connections directly and start those conversations. If you have ideas or you want to join webinars, or you want to be given that information, I believe there's some newsletters we talked about that go out to share this info. Reach out and connect. That is the most important thing, to reach out and connect. I want to say a big thank you to the City of Albuquerque and the Mayor's Office for coming together and saying, let's get this information out to the public the best that we can, and let's make sure that the citizens of Albuquerque and our small business owners know that there is connections in the city, and ways that we can continue to grow and build as we begin to reopen after the pandemic. And this is one of the ways. So I want to thank everybody on the panel today, from the Office of Civil Rights and the Office of Equity Inclusion, and of course, Raced Consulting, for joining us today. I cannot say enough. Reach out, get involved, do your part in the community. Visit the Choose One website. That is a huge initiative that we have here at the Hispano Chamber with the City of Albuquerque. Do one thing: volunteer. if you're seeking employment, get to the city website and see what's available for you. But do one thing in your community, whatever that may be. I'm sure everybody on this panel would love to talk to you if you're a volunteer, because we need your help and we need you to keep our city beautiful and keep it friendly. And we're really excited to see you guys next week for a whole new group, a whole new sessions of meeting the city departments. Everybody have a wonderful weekend. Thank you to the panel, and we will see you guys all next week. Thanks, everybody.
Thank you, Shannon. Very nice. I
Thank
appreciate the invite.
you.